Pretty much most of my life was a competitive soccer player. Suffered some concussions as a result of that and had to retire senior year of college. And I went through this really dark period where I didn't really know who I was without being an athlete. Tried to find an identity here or identity there, and I didn't know where I belonged in the world. I did experience my own suicidal ideations at times because I said, well, if I'm not an athlete, why do I need to live? Why do I need to be here? Over the course of time, I actually found bowling in 2019. 2019 kind of started, I got my first ball drilled, and really just dove headfirst into it. And I just found this whole new world where I could still channel that competitive nature. It's very different because it's very individualized as opposed to a team sport where I'm more comfortable. But over time, I'm getting more comfortable in the individual aspect of it. But what it's really done is it's actually just kind of helped me pull me out of that very dark place of not knowing who I was without an athlete. And I've come to accept that once an athlete, always an athlete. And I'm always going to be an athlete. And this is just another way in which I can use that competitive nature. And when I started bowling, bowlers wear jerseys. And I started to kind of notice, there were a lot of other different awareness type jerseys out there. Very, very minimal at best, mental health related awareness jerseys. And so then I just was like, you know what? I really want to create a 988 jersey. I reached out to Oklahoma State Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse and 988 and asked if I could create this jersey to wear on the lanes. Fortunately, they granted me to be able to do that, and so that is this jersey. So the jersey, is meant to share the 988 helpline and let people know that there is a place to call if you are in crisis, call or text if you are in crisis. But I also wanted to specifically make this jersey for my Uncle Tim. And so I do have a ribbon here, in memory of Uncle Tim. Even in the midst of my crisis that I was experiencing last year, Uncle Tim was all I could think about. And knowing how he struggled alone in his crisis, to know that he is with me while I'm bowling, doing the one thing that helped save my life is very meaningful. And I want to honor him and the life that he lived. From the time I was little, I was just very enamored with my Uncle Tim. He and I were just always very close. Anytime my mom would say, Uncle Tim's coming home for Christmas, and it was just the best, always made for the best Christmas. 2014 or so, we started to kind of notice around Thanksgiving, he was having some significant mental health struggles. We had found out that he had called at that time the suicide hotline. My grandmother, his mother, pretty much all my life had said, Tim he's always just been very different, but that didn't stop me from just adoring him. He came home one last Christmas in 2014, and that was not the Uncle Tim that I knew. And I could see that he was tremendously struggling. Prior to that, I had kind of had my own struggles. And he and I talked openly about it that one final Christmas. And he said, your mom says that you deal with some suicide and, things like that. And I said, yeah, I do. But it was kind of that last Christmas where I was like, I don't know if he can fight this. And he actually went into inpatient care. It was January 18th, 2015. We kind of knew that it was very touch and go. And so everybody was constantly checking on him and calling him every day and making sure that he was safe and he was okay. And the afternoon of January 18th, nobody could get in touch with him. His brothers had spoken to him a couple days before and said he sounded great. He sounded just like the Tim that they knew. And that day, everybody just kept calling. And eventually my dad had to call the Houston Police Department, do a welfare check. And that's where he was found. So he took his own life that day and has shattered our family. I mean, I don't know any other way to put it. In the years since his passing, I find that we're very much alike. What I know of my grandfather, his father, is that he was a schizophrenic or had schizophrenia, kind of suffered, I think, from some bipolar at the time. He spent a lot of time in mental health hospitals. And so we do believe that maybe Tim had, got that genetic gene where he did have to experience some of that. So my mother, she had some very lengthy health challenges, and she passed March 10th of 2021. As we kind of dealt with her absence, I began to unravel. Really kind of just struggled, mom's gone. But what do we do now? And I already kind of deal with a lot of anxiety in general, but every time the panic attacks would gradually get worse, to the point where I would kind of be just in my bed, just shaking, not knowing if she was going to come home. And the amount of times we did that was just countless at this point. I started to experience severe dissociation and depersonalization, derealization, and was very, very close to losing touch with reality and kind of encountering or experiencing a psychotic break. I sought treatment and was able to get stabilized at Oakwood Springs Hospital in Northwest Oklahoma City. I'm still healing, from just that experience alone, and dealing, with the grief of losing my mother, because, losing any parent is hard, but losing kind of your one connection to the world is devastating. But as a result of that, I started to recognize some signs and symptoms in April of 23, so April of last year. Where I worked at the time it was already just a very stressful environment, just because of all of the events that were going on during that particular month. A couple weeks before one of our biggest events in April, there were multiple people talking, and I was trying to participate in the conversation because it had to do with me and what I was working on, and it felt like a panic attack, but then all of a sudden I was out of my body. I can't catch my breath. I think I'm having a panic attack. I don't know what's going on. It just kind of hit me out of nowhere. And I just kind of pressed through. I kind of was like, okay, this feels a lot like the dissociation I experienced in 21. And then it started to progress to a more severe, where every day I would get up and I would go to work, and I would be driving to work and have no idea how I got there. I had been seeing my psychiatrist and my therapist pretty regularly up to that point, but things weren't really improving. And so I sought treatment again at Oakwood Springs. In the process of getting treatment, I was informed that I was no longer employed. That, of course, created another cataclysmic event, and I ended up being in outpatient treatment for over 3 months. And I will say that bowling after this crisis that I encountered, it's kept me alive. That's why I'm here today. If I didn't have bowling, there's a good chance that my uncle and I would be in the same place. So we are here at Windsor Lanes today, and this is my sanctuary, as I would call it. If I was ever having a bad day, this is where I could go and I could perform and I could get any kind of aggression out while also still achieving that competitive nature that I'm so used to. My support system is small but mighty, is how I would classify them. It was, my best friend Samantha and my therapist, who were significant encouragers of seeking a higher level of care. Outpatient and inpatient facilities are there should you need it, if you're encountering a crisis or are struggling with addiction. And if you don't have access to those services, for whatever reason, whether it be geography, 988 is always there. It's a call or a text away, and you have licensed professionals that are there to help you through your crisis.